Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, saying, "Do not retreat." This a few days after Iraqi special forces managed to breach the eastern outskirts of Mosul. It was there that al-Baghdadi declared a caliphate 2 years ago. Joining me now from the UK is Anthony King, the chair of the Department of War Studies, Politics and International Studies at Warwick University. Hello, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, what do you make of this audio recording, apparently, of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi?
Well, I think there's two implications from it. I mean, the first is, which was pretty clear, that ISIL will fight for Mosul. I mean, there was some doubt in the press and some commentary that whether they would fight and whether they would retreat. And to be honest, it was absolutely clear they were going to fight because it's their critical city and it's the last city they really have in Iraq. So this confirms that they will fight, and it's likely to be pretty bloody, the campaign, as it goes on. The second point where some interpretations have been made, which I think is also interesting, is it shows a potential concern on the part of ISIL in Iraq and on the part of Baghdadi himself that actually, given the forces arrayed against him and the clear determination of the Iraqi government, backed obviously very closely by the US, that he, potentially is concerned about the assault and the potential collapse of his regime, which actually looks pretty likely now.
So some admission of weakness then?
Well, I mean, one would have to be careful here. That is an interpretation people have put on it. I don't think it's an implausible interpretation. What certainly is the case is that he and everybody else, but he himself, recognises that Mosul is absolutely decisive, and its fall would really signal the end of the caliphate in its current format. I mean, what follows is a quite different question. But I think that, yes, it really shows some concern on his behalf, and his concern, of course, is right. I mean, the Iraqi government must retake Mosul, and if they do, ISIS, in territorial terms, will have been almost eliminated from Iraq.
Are there any clues in this recording as to his whereabouts?
Well, interesting. I would suspect here that the intelligence services have a pretty good idea. On open source, publicly available sources, there's no way of telling. Mosul is possible. Some commentators have suggested Mosul. I might suggest it's possibly more likely to be in Syria, but that is a guess on the basis of open source intelligence. I mean, it is possible he's in Mosul. That is certainly where he has been based at some points. And that might then explain his concern about the upcoming fight. But that would be very difficult for a civilian public source commentator to actually confirm.
Now, the Iraqi Prime Minister Abadi has spoken of humanitarian corridors. Do you think, though, that might not happen because, of course, there's a very good chance of jihadists passing themselves off as civilians to get out of Mosul? Yeah,
I mean, I think the upcoming fight is problematic in a number of ways. If you look at the nearest parallel we have in Iraq, which is Fallujah in November 2004, what happened in Fallujah, which is a smaller and easier city to take, the civilian population left, leaving only the insurgents, the Anbari and al-Qaeda insurgents within the city for the US Marine Corps to capture, or in many cases, in fact, to kill. Now, Mosul, I don't think it's going to be like that. I think the civilian population is too large. I think that, in fact, ISIS are very likely to actually use the civilian population, and even if the civilian population, some of them do use these humanitarian corridors, I think it's highly likely that some sort of suicide attack is on those civilians themselves or on the security forces around them is very likely. So I think the Iraqi government and its partners, its coalition partners, face some very considerable difficulties in the Mosul operation. It doesn't mean it's not going to be successful. I think the importance of it suggests that it will be successful. But it's going to be very hard. I mean, the danger, especially with this humanitarian concern, is, of course, an Aleppo-like situation. And I think that's of deep concern to everybody.